Okay, so we're going to continue our work with the Bill of Rights with a shared reading where I am going to read it to you, and we will go over each one. If you guys have questions, remember to raise your hands. Also, it's in Google Classroom under Bill of Rights. You should have that up already. We've already had you paraphrase it in the tipped homework, and we had you think about what were the most relevant to you, the ones that seemed the least relevant to you before we read it. We'll see if you change your mind after we go over it a little bit in class. Most of you seem to think the First, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments were the most important, and that the second and third were the least important. First is right to assembly, free speech, press, basic rights to express ideas. And fifth and sixth, a lot of due process related to court stuff, or if you were ever in trouble, or jury, witnesses, things like that. The ones that you didn't think were that important. Second Amendment related mostly to guns. And third is the billeting of soldiers in your houses. And I can see why the billeting doesn't make any sense. And the guns is because none of you own guns. So you think that it's not that important. So I'm going to set the timer for the discussion. We're going to try to keep it to 15 minutes. I know I usually go over, but that's why I'm using the timer. And hopefully we won't go too far over. So we're going to move into the shared reading. When we do the reading, I want you to think about if anything that we talk about changes your mind about the importance of the different amendments. And the other thing I would like you to think about is be prepared. The exit ticket at the end of class today is going to be what amendment could you cite or revoke for if your mom were to yell at you to wake you up at 5 in the morning to go to school. So just think about that for later, and that'll be your exit ticket. So Bill of Rights, we know it's 10 amendments. We're going to do a shared reading now. You guys follow it. Raise your hand if you have questions. I might not call on you until I'm done reading it, but raise your hands. Remember that the shoulder buddies, we've already assigned your shoulder buddies to help you understand it. And I've moved some of you to the front of the class so that you can hear me reading, and then that you're closer to me for help. Johnny and Joey, you need to not sit together. You switch shoulder buddies. You don't get along well enough. So Johnny, go with Dee Dee. Joey, go with Marky, and let's get started. So I'm going to read out of the Constitution. My dad gave me this when I went to college originally. He was I told you he was a political science professor, and he was a constitutional scholar. And so this, he always thought was the most important thing he gave me on my way to school. So First Amendment, restrictions of power of Congress. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or the press or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. All right, so that basically says the government can't keep you from sharing your ideas. You can have your ideas, you can tell people your ideas, you can meet with people to talk about ideas, including protests, and you can tell the government your grievances. That's a big deal, and many of you thought that was one of the most important. Amendment 2, right to bear arms. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So although most of you thought that wasn't very important, it's extremely important because it's one of the most contentious issues in the United States right now. The Supreme Court has said that the militia part doesn't really matter. So proponents for gun rights just say, look at the Supreme Court said it's good. People who don't think the guns should be more controlled in this country will state out that it was supposed to be for a militia, a well-organized militia. That's currently not what's happening. So you have the right to buy guns when you're 18. So it's very interesting that you can walk into a Big Five sporting goods and buy a gun. So Amendment 3, billeting of soldiers. You guys didn't think that was very important. I agree, it doesn't really happen. No soldier shall in time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in any manner to be prescribed by law. We'll move on from that because that's not really happening. But it did, remember, in the unit around the War of Independence. It's one of the grievances that the British were being billeted in houses of people who actually didn't support them. Amendment 4, seizures, searches, and warrants. The right of the people to secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. and no warrant shall be issued but upon the probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be searched. We've talked about this around other issues, is that the police cannot search your house without a warrant, which means they have to check in with the judge and say, this is why we think we will find something worth having a warrant for to go in. They can't just say, I don't like the way you look, or you've been shady in the past and we're going to go look in your house. Otherwise, the government could go in your house at any time they wanted with any pretext, like for any reason whatsoever. I'm surprised more of you didn't say that was one of the most important. So Amendment 4 and 5, let's see, 4. No person shall be held to answer for a capital, otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment of indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces. That's pretty archaic. I'm going to split that. I'm going to skip that. The big part is at the end, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. So due process of law means that they can't make up the rules as they go. You can't make up the rules as you go. There is a set of instructions that protects your rights. The government has to go through these sets of instructions that you know ahead of time to press a civil or criminal case against you. That's vital, because otherwise somebody in power could just make up the rules as they go, just so they can convict you. Amendment 5, mode of trial in a criminal proceeding. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed by the nature of the cause of the accusations, to be confronted with witnesses against him, to have compulsory process, obtain witness in his favor, and have the assistance of counsel for his defense. You can't get arrested and then say, oh, they can say, well, you don't have enough money for a lawyer. No, a lawyer is provided for you if you can't afford one, because those are experts in the law. You aren't. You have to be told of the accusation ahead of time so you and your lawyer can prepare a defense, and you have to be allowed to cross-examine, cross-examine your accusers, and you have the right to find your own witnesses. Otherwise, you would have just the king and maybe a bishop say that God thinks you're a witch, and you can't have anybody else say otherwise. Amendment 6, nope, 5-6. Trial by jury. In the suits of common law where the value in the controversy shall exceed $20, very low amount of money, but back then it was worth more, the right of a trial by jury shall be preserved. So basically, we know that there are judges. Judges are part of the establishment. So if you had police arrest you and prosecutors prosecute you, and then the judge decide, it's very government heavy. Remember, one of the major things about the War of Independence was being able to make our own decisions as a country. But remember, one of the main points in the Constitution, it actually comes in the preamble, was to tell you that these rights are about you, not about the country. So the restrictions are put onto the government, and the rights are given to you. So if you're going to be at a trial, you don't want a judge to decide for you. You want a jury of your peers. You want people, because it's we the people on all that jazz, and you want the right for a normal everyday people to be able to have the power in the situation. Vitally important for why we fought and why we created a constitution, or why we ratified a constitution in this country. So bails, fines, punishments. It's also associated with this amendment 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7. That was 7. More trial. Bails and fines, cruel and unusual punishment. We're working to get rid of cash bails in this country. Let me check the time. What's it say? It says I still have a little bit of time. It's not very fair if you're poor and you get accused of stealing a horse or a candy bar, for them to give you $1 million bail. It's not fair for them to give you a $10,000 bail if you're really poor, because that bail for rich people, they can handle that bail, whereas for poorer people, you can't afford the bail. So being a huge bail is not okay, and cruel and unusual punishment is okay. One of the things that happens in our court system when you don't have bail is you might be in jail for 2 years if you're really poor, because you can't afford a lawyer. that is good at bail stuff, even though you have a lawyer to help you with the case, you don't have the money to get out of jail. You might be facing less than 2 years if you get convicted. So you're in jail for 2 years because you're poor, and you get convicted and you maybe serve more time than you should have, or you not convicted and you just spent 2 years in jail and not having done anything, even though you weren't convicted. Let's see, certain rights not that. Oh, the enumeration of the Constitution of certain, so this is 9 rights, not be consistent. Okay, this is not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So again, if it's not expressly given to you, it doesn't mean you do not have it, because you can't remember everything. And then as a living document, which some people disagree with, 250 years, some years after it was created, there's going to be things going on that weren't given to you. A lot of internet stuff, a lot of privacy, digital privacy stuff, no one thought about that. And it was not given to you directly or explicitly. With the examples of today's technologies or other social contexts. So that doesn't mean they're precluded. You still have these rights, and they can create the rights, and they can adjust the rights to be defined by what's going on today, and not just like when there were horses and buggies. State rights, the power not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or the people. Once again, if it's not written down or it's not taken away, the tie goes to the runner, and the runner is the states, or it is you as a person or citizen of the country. So you don't even have to be a citizen of the country to be afforded its rights. That's me misspeaking. Anyone in the country gets the same rights. It's actually very important. Judicial powers, this is the 11th. Oh, you know what? We don't have to go to that. We're not going to that. 9, 10. So we're done with that. So that has the rest of the amendments in there as well. So let me check time, see how much time we have. Are there any questions for thinking? No, that's not relevant to what we're talking about. So raise your hand if you have, if you've changed your mind about what's the most or least important. All right, Ivan, what do you think's the most important? You first thought it was the First Amendment, so you could talk to people about what's going, but now you're changing it to the due process amendments because you're thinking that if you get into trouble, you're going to want those more than just sort of being able to talk or whatever. All right, does anybody agree with him? Lupe, what do you think? You still think the First Amendment is the most important because you think not everybody gets in trouble, so that it doesn't apply, but everybody has their First Amendment rights. I think that's a good distinction to make. So if you're planning on a life of crime, maybe the due process ones are better, maybe not. Does anybody change which ones they think are the least important? We thought guns and, right, you know, we thought guns and billeting the soldiers was the least important. Do you guys, anyone changed your mind? No, you guys still all think that? All right. Are there, so I wanted to remind you guys that these rights, the preamble, the Constitution, are the most important parts. Hold on, that's 10 minutes. We still have 3 minutes. The most important parts of the whole Constitution building is about the rights of the individuals and groups of individuals and the checks. Remember, we talked about checks and balances in the last unit, but the checks on government authority. We know we were trying to get away as a colony to become a country, so we didn't have arbitrary rulings by government and kings and people like that. And we didn't want to be taxed without being able to make choices. And so the Bill of the Rights, what it does is sets out the basic rights that we all have in this country. We know there's been a lot more amendments, and it sets out to check the government's ability to do whatever they want. It's vitally important and squarely in line with what we did with the War for Independence in the first place. Do we have any questions about what we're doing next? Right, we're in Google Classroom. Remember, you can check out there. We're going to do, I want to make sure that the shoulder buddies, I'm going to come around and check with you to see how you're doing, see if you're in agreement or not. And our transition is going to be, you can see online, we're going to do another bit of paraphrasing, but in groups. And with this one, because we're a STEAM school, remember, we're going to have you do art representation of your paraphrasing of the amendments, right? Remember, you can reference the amendments in your Google Classroom where they are, or you can ask me questions. But I want you to check in with your shoulder buddies and your table groups first, as always, because we want you to reflect as you go. We want you to work collectively, collaboratively, right, as always. And because there's some synergy. Remember, we talked about synergy built into working together that you don't get just from asking me. I want you guys to figure out some of this stuff. But I'm also here if you need. You don't have to be a good artist. Remember, it's just representation. As always, you get extra credit for adding some art that has color, not just stick figures. Stick figures are fine, but throw some art in there as well. Let's see. Does everybody understand what we're doing? Let me see a thumbs up. Okay, great. Bobby, I want to make sure you don't have any questions. You're okay. Juan, you're all right? No, you're not all right. Come up and ask me your question when we do the transition, because I wanted to check in with you anyway. And then let's see. Just remember that after doing our art, we're going to check back in with what your paraphrasing is, see if you've changed your mind after we've had this conversation. And remember, the exit ticket is your mom wakes you up at 5 in the morning yelling, go to school, get out here, go to school. I want you to think, while we're doing this, I want you to think about which one of the first 10 amendments in the Bill of Rights helps protect you from your mom. So yeah, if you have any other questions, just come up and check with me. If it's super relevant to everybody, I'll tell everybody what's going on. And I hope you enjoyed this class. Remember our general discussion rules. We are in groups. There's going to be a lot of people talking. So look at the poster up here. Remember the level we're supposed to be, not at a whisper, but at just a talk that's sort of in the middle. It can't get loud. It can't be boisterous. Other people are working. When you are done, do not get up and walk around the room. If you get started late, do not goof off because you're not going to start right away. If you're having trouble, you ask your shoulder buddy first, then you ask around your table, and then you come up and talk to me. Okay, great. Then, oh, hey, it's Friday. This is great. See you.